Hello and welcome. Today we're looking at a figure who is, well, arguably one of the most recognizable faces in the history of American television. But the image most of us have of him, the ringmaster of these chaotic onstage brawls, that's really only a tiny fraction of the story.
It really is. It's a story that's just full of these profound contradictions. I mean, we're talking about a man who was a serious politician, an award-winning journalist, a lawyer, and also the child of refugees.
And somehow all of that led to him becoming the face of what many critics would label trash TV. Exactly. So today we are going to explore the life of Gerald Norman Springer, Gary Springer. And to really understand how he ended up in that Chicago studio with chairs flying, we have to start somewhere completely different.
A very different place, under very different circumstances. We have to go back to London in 1944.
And not just anywhere in London. This is just a striking detail.
Yeah.
Jerry Springer was born on February 13th, 1944, inside the Highgate Tube Station.
In the London Underground, yes.
So why there?
Well, this was right in the middle of World War II, and the station was being used as a bomb shelter, to protect civilians from German bombing raids. That's literally where his life began, underground, during an air raid.
Wow. That really sets a stage, doesn't it? A life that, from its very first moments, was defined by global conflict and just survival.
Absolutely. His parents, Margot and Richard Springer, were Jewish refugees. They had managed to escape from a town called Landsberg and der Warth.
Which was then part of Prussia, and now it's in Poland.
Correct. And they were fleeing the Holocaust. They got out, but sadly, much of their family did not.
The source material is just heartbreaking on this. It details that his maternal grandmother, Marie Kallman, was killed in the gas vans at the Chirvno extermination camp.
And on his father's side, his paternal grandmother, Selma Springer, she died in the hospital at the Theresienstadt concentration camp.
Her brother was also there, right? A doctor.
Yes. His great-uncle, Hermann Elkeles, he was a renowned doctor in Berlin, and he also died at Theresienstadt. So this is the weight of history that this family and Jerry Springer himself carried.
It's profound. He said later in life that this background really influenced his entire worldview, especially on, the ethical judgments people have to make.
How could it not? He was born into a world where your politics, your ideology, it was literally a matter of life and death.
Right.
That perspective is so crucial to understanding him. So in January 1948, the family immigrates to the United States. Jerry was about 4 years old.
And they settle in Queens, New York City, Kew Gardens specifically.
He attended Forest Hills High School there, and there's this one specific moment in his youth that seems to have really ignited his political drive.
What was that?
He was 16 years old watching the 1960 Democratic National Convention on TV.
And he saw John F. Kennedy.
Exactly. He was reportedly just incredibly impressed by Kennedy. That moment seems to have been what crystallized his interest in politics and public service.
So he follows that path into his education. He gets a Bachelor of Arts from Tulane University in 1965 in political science, and then he goes on to get his Juris Doctor from Northwestern in 1968.
Which brings us right to the first major phase of his professional life. And it's not in television, not in entertainment. It's deep in the world of political action.
The same year he graduates law school in 1968, he's already working as a campaign advisor.
For Robert F. Kennedy.
For RFK.
Another Kennedy.
But then, of course, history deals another tragic blow.
Robert Kennedy is assassinated. And after that, Springer moves into legal practice. He joins a firm, Frost & Jacobs, in Cincinnati, Ohio.
And that move to Cincinnati is so important. That city really becomes his home base, his political base, for decades.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't just practice law there. He immediately threw himself into the local political arena. By 1970, he's already running for the U.S. House of Representatives.
And he's running as a Democrat in what was a traditionally Republican district. He's trying to unseat an incumbent, Donald Clancy.
He didn't win, no, but the result was really impressive. He got 45% of the vote. In a district like that, for a young Democrat, that was a huge showing. It proved he had this, natural charisma and ability to connect with voters.
He's also really involved in a major national issue at the time.
The voting age.
Yes, he was spearheading the effort to lower the voting age to 18. He actually testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee to support ratifying the 26th Amendment.
He was also an Army reservist during this period, which is interesting because just 3 days after he announced he was running for Congress, he got called up to active duty at Fort Knox.
So he had to pause the campaign.
Had to pause it and then resumed right after he was discharged. So after that congressional loss, he sets his sights a little more locally. In 1971, he runs for the Cincinnati City Council.
And he wins. He's elected. He's this young, rising star in the city.
Right.
And then 1974 happens.
Right. This is the moment where his career takes its first very public and very unexpected nosedive.
He resigns from the city council.
He resigns, yes. He admits that he solicited a prostitute.
And the details of this scandal are they're so specific. It wasn't just the act itself. It was how everyone found out.
A check.
He paid with a personal check.
He paid the prostitute with a personal check. That detail became the sort of defining, almost infamous part of the story. In politics, that should have been a career-ending event.
Absolutely. Resigning in disgrace over a sex scandal, I mean, that's usually it. You're done.
But this is where we start to see the Jerry Springer playbook, you know? His resilience, his almost uncanny understanding of public opinion. He didn't hide.
He did the opposite. He made a comeback almost immediately. He ran for his old council seat again in 1975.
And he won. And not just squeaked by. He won by a landslide. It's incredible. The voters forgave him, maybe because he was so candid about it.
So he gets back on the council, and his star just keeps rising. By 1977, the city council actually chooses him to serve as the mayor of Cincinnati.
He served as the 56th mayor for 1 year, from 77 to 78.
And his style as mayor was, from what I've read, pretty unconventional. It was described as gonzo.
Oh, yeah. He was not your traditional stuffy politician. There are these stories of him spending a night in jail just to see what the conditions were like.
Or, what was it? Commandeering a city bus?
Yes. Right after the city took over the bus service, he jumped on a bus and took it for a ride to, make a point. He was very hands-on, very media savvy even then.
But he still had higher ambitions.
In 1982, he decides to run for governor of Ohio.
And this campaign becomes famous for one thing in particular. A television commercial.
The commercial, yes. He addresses the prostitution scandal from the 70s head on. In the ad, he literally references the check.
He just puts it all out there.
All of it. He looks into the camera and says he's not afraid of the truth, quote, even if it hurts.
It's an incredible, bold strategy. Did it work?
Well, it didn't get him the nomination. He finished third in the Democratic primary, and that defeat, that effectively put his political career on ice.
So as one door closes, another, very different one, opens.
And this brings us to the next almost unbelievable chapter of his life, the serious journalist.
It is so strange to think about now, given what came later, but Jerry Springer became a very well-respected, very popular news anchor.
He was hired by WLWT, which is the NBC affiliate in Cincinnati.
And at the time he was hired, their news program was dead last in the ratings.
It was. He was brought on initially as a political reporter and commentator, but he was so good, he quickly rose to become the primary news anchor and also the managing editor.
And he really took it seriously. He looked at the great newsmen of the era, like Walter Cronkite, for inspiration. He even wanted his own signature sign-off.
Which is where his famous line comes from. He created the phrase, take care of yourself and each other.
And it was completely earnest. It wasn't a joke. And it really connected with the viewers in Cincinnati.
The transformation was remarkable. Within just 2 years, he took WLWT from last place to being the #1 news program in the city.
And it wasn't just about ratings. He was winning awards for the quality of his work.
10 regional Emmy Awards, mostly for his nightly commentaries. And these commentaries were serious, thoughtful pieces on local and national issues.
They were actually the direct precursor to what later became his Final Thought segment on the talk show.
Exactly. For 5 years, he was the most popular news anchor in the city, a serious Emmy-winning journalist.
But when he tried to take that act to a bigger market, it didn't go so smoothly.
Yeah.
There was an incident in Chicago in 1997.
Right. He was hired by the NBC station there, WMAQ-TV, to do news commentaries just like he did in Cincinnati.
The problem was, by 1997, his other job, the talk show, had already started to become, well, notorious.
Yes, and the two longtime, very popular anchors at that Chicago station, Ron Majors and Carol Marin, they were appalled. They felt that having Jerry Springer, the talk show host, on their serious newscast compromised their journalistic integrity.
And they resigned in protest.
They did. It was a huge story. And Springer ended up resigning from that commentary job after only 2 appearances.
Which brings us, of course, to the main event. The phenomenon that made him a household name, not just in America, but around the world. The talk show.
Jerry Springer debuted on September 30th, 1991. And it's so important for people to remember that the show did not start out as a brawl fest.
Not at all. Originally, it was a politically oriented talk show. It was basically just a longer, hour-long version of his news commentaries.
His early guests were people like Oliver North, Jesse Jackson. They discuss serious topics, homelessness, gun politics, things like that.
But the ratings were not great.
They were not spectacular, no. So in 1994, there's a major pivot. Springer and his new producer, a man named Richard Dominic, they completely revamped the format. The goal was simple: boost the ratings.
And to do that, they decided to go after a very different kind of content.
This is the shift. They moved toward what the sources describe as tabloidish sensationalism. The guests were no longer political figures or experts.
They were everyday people.
Everyday people with very messy lives. The topics changed completely. It became about confronting family members over adultery or controversial lifestyles or, membership in hate groups. Very volatile situations.
And the atmosphere on stage became defined by, well, scripted shouting and very often physical violence.
The security guards, led by Steve Wilkos, became characters in their own right, constantly having to break up fights.
And from a ratings perspective, it worked.
Oh, it worked like gangbusters. Culturally, it just exploded. By 1998, the show was regularly beating The Oprah Winfrey Show in the ratings in many cities. It was reaching something like 8 million viewers a day.
It became a real cultural touchstone.
Yeah.
The Los Angeles Times later called him the millennials' babysitter because for a whole generation of kids, this chaotic spectacle was just always on TV in the afternoon when they got home from school.
And with that massive success came, of course, immense controversy. It wasn't just critics calling it trash TV. There were real-world tragic consequences.
You're talking about the 2002 lawsuit.
The lawsuit filed by the sons of a guest named Nancy Campbell Panitz, yes.
Could you walk us through that case? It's pretty dark.
It is. Nancy Campbell Panitz appeared on an episode in May of 2000 with her ex-husband and his new girlfriend. It was one of those classic love triangle confrontations.
And what happened after the show?
Hours after the episode aired, the ex-husband murdered her. The lawsuit filed by her sons claimed that the show created a mood that led to murder by ambushing her and, intentionally creating a volatile, humiliating situation.
And what was the outcome of that lawsuit?
Ultimately, the estate dropped the monetary claims against the show, but the case really highlighted the serious ethical questions and the potential for real-world danger that came with exploiting these raw emotions for entertainment.
And yet, despite all the controversy, the lawsuits, the criticism, the show just kept going.
It had incredible longevity. It aired until July 2018. That's 27 seasons.
It even went international. There was a UK version, right?
Yes, The Springer Show. It was a bit more subdued, as you'd expect, but still very popular. It actually beat its main rival, a similar show hosted by Trisha Goddard, in the ratings.
So Jerry Springer becomes this global icon of chaos. But he didn't just stay in that one lane. He leveraged that fame to become this sort of renaissance man of pop culture. He was everywhere for a while.
He really was. And he completely embraced the persona. In 1998, he starred in a movie called Ringmaster.
Where he basically played himself, a talk show host named Jerry Farrelly.
Right. And he wrote an autobiography with the same title. He was leaning into the brand.
And then there are the cameos. I mean, who could forget his appearance in Austin Powers?
Yeah.
The Guy Who Shagged Me.
Mediating a conflict between Dr. Evil and his son, Scott, it was a perfect, self-aware moment.
But he also proved he could do more than just sit in a chair and watch people fight. In 2006, he was on Dancing with the Stars.
And his motivation for doing that was actually really touching.
He said he wanted to learn the waltz for his daughter's wedding.
Which he did. It showed a much softer side of him. He also hosted America's Got Talent for 2 seasons.
And in maybe the most surreal turn of all, he inspired a British musical.
Jerry Springer. The opera, which was not a joke. It was a serious, critically acclaimed piece of theater. It won 4 Olivier Awards, which are basically the British equivalent of the Tonys.
Incredible. And then in his later years, he seemed to circle back to some of his earlier passions.
He did. He hosted a liberal talk radio show for a while called Springer on the Radio on Air America. And from 2015 to 2022, he hosted the Jerry Springer podcast,
which he recorded from a coffee shop in Ludlow, Kentucky. Again, that connection to the local conversational style.
Then he combined his 2 big careers, law and television, for Judge Jerry.
Right, from 2019 to 2022. It was a courtroom show, but he was a real judge in the sense that he was using his actual law degree to adjudicate these small claims cases. He called it his grown-up show.
And right up until the very end, he was performing. In 2022, just a few months before his death, he was on The Masked Singer.
Performing as Beetle.
As Beetle, yes.
So through all of this wild career, what about his personal life? You mentioned his daughter, It seems like his family life was much more stable than the chaos on his show.
It seems to have been, yes. He married Mickey Velton back in 1973, and while there were some reports that they had divorced, a family spokesperson actually confirmed they were still married at the time of his death.
And they had one daughter, Katie, born in 1976.
Yes. And Katie was born with some significant health challenges. She was born without nasal passages, which required immediate surgery. She's also blind and deaf in one ear.
The sources really highlight Springer's dedication to her and to helping others with disabilities.
Very much so. He donated a substantial amount of money, $230,000, to her school, the Park School, to build a facility called Katie's Corner for students with disabilities. And Katie herself went on to work there as an assistant teacher.
It shows a completely different side of the man we saw on TV.
A very different side. And politically, he never really gave up. He stayed heavily involved with the Democratic Party, was a major donor.
He even considered running for office again, didn't he?
Several times. He thought about running for the U.S. Senate in Ohio in 2000 and 2004, and even for governor again in 2018.
But he always backed down. Why?
He was a realist. He knew that the negative association with the talk show, that baggage, would be just too heavy to overcome in a serious political campaign.
Jerry Springer passed away on April 27, 2023. He was at his home in Evanston, Illinois. He was 79.
The cause of death was pancreatic cancer. He'd only been diagnosed a few months prior.
The tributes that came in after his death were really telling. I saw the one from Steve Wilkos, his old security guard who became a host himself.
Yes. Wilkos called him the smartest, most generous, kindest person he had ever known. And you hear that over and over from people who actually work with him, that the on-air persona was just that, a persona.
So when we look back, when we reflect on his whole legacy,
Mm-hmm.
what are we left with? It's such a complicated picture.
It is the ultimate legacy of duality. On one hand, you have a show that was widely called a cultural pariah, a show that was blamed for, coarsening the culture and lowering the standards of television.
But on the other hand,
There's what the Irish Times called the Jerry Springer formula, which they described as straightforward, despicable, and ingenious.
ingenious in what way?
Ingenious because he did something that mainstream media almost never did. He went to the fringes of society, to people who were often ignored, marginalized, or mocked, and he gave them a global stage.
And whether that was ultimately exploitation or a strange form of empowerment, that's the debate that will probably go on forever.
I think so. But there is just no denying that he was an era-defining figure, a man who lived this life of just remarkable, unbelievable variety, from a bomb shelter in London to the mayor's office in Cincinnati, and finally to the center of the world's television screen.
A fascinating, complicated journey. Thank you for walking us through it.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.